Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, aka Three Peaks Trading. And in this video, I'm going to take a little bit of a deviation from my normal style of content. But I mentioned in my last video that I wanted to really try to reach people, especially younger people, and show them how they can go from no matter where they start at to how they can become wealthy. And one of the biggest myths that I see in the world today is how it's so much harder for young people than it's ever been and how it's just not fair. And not a week goes by that I don't see this myth either online or hear it from somebody in real life. And guys, it is a myth. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how life is actually easier today than it used to be. So right here is a sheet, and we're going to compare the year 2001, which is when I was a teenager. I was 19 years old in 2001, and I got my first apartment that year. Minimum wage here in the state of Missouri was $5.15 per hour. My rent was $550 a month. My car was a 1996 Honda Civic that I bought from a local used car dealership. It had about 100,000 miles on it. My insurance was $98 a month. And you might be wondering, how do you know that? I remember because at the time I was really upset about paying almost $100 a month for insurance. My gas was $1.19 a gallon. And my food, I have no idea how much food costs at the grocery store, but I know I used to go to McDonald's all the time, and it was like $5 for a Big Mac supersized meal. My cell phone bill was actually about $200 a month back then. There were no iPhones, but my cell phone, they were more expensive back then. You didn't get a cell phone where you could just call anybody as much as you wanted. You had a very limited amount of minutes, like 200 minutes a month, and you had what they called free nights and weekends that started at 9 p.m. So if you used your phone during the day, you had to pay to use it. And I used my phone during the day. So my bill was typically around $200 a month. And then my TV service, which I couldn't afford, so I didn't have it. But when I did have it, it was like $60 a month for cable. So let's compare that to today real quick. Here in Missouri, minimum wage is currently $13.75 an hour. It's actually going up to $15 on January 1st, 2026. So that means that minimum wage is 2.67 times higher today than it was when I was a teenager. That same one-bedroom apartment that I used to rent for $550 currently rents for like $700, but I think that's an anomaly. Most one-bedroom apartments in this area of the country are about $800 a month. So that's 1.45 times more expensive. Oh, are you seeing this? Already we can say, wait a minute, rent, if it was keeping up with the minimum wage, rent should be $1,468 a month for that apartment. A car, that 1996 Honda Civic was a 4-year-old car. So if we go to Car Gurus and we look up cars, and I find a car that is 4 years old, so it looks like 56,000. Mine had about 100,000 miles on it. These are newer. This is a 1-year-old Honda Civic. Holy cow. 2021. Let's do 2 years. 21, 22. Let's go mileage. There's the closest one. Okay. 21,747. And there's some that are cheaper than that. Like look at this one. 17,000, 25,000, 25,000, 20,000. So let's just say this one's only got 60,000 miles. Let's say ballpark, this one's 19. Let's call it 21,000. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say that a Honda Civic today, roughly similar to the one that I had, as far as age and stuff goes, 21,000. So it's double the price of a Honda Civic. But again, if it was keeping up with the minimum wage increase, it would be 28,000. Insurance today is $161. It's actually cheaper than that. How do I know that? Because I have a teenager and her insurance is $161. The difference is her insurance is not on a 4 or 5-year-old $10,000 car. Her insurance was on a brand new car. So $161 is her insurance. Now that being said, in all fairness, that is a discounted rate because she's on my insurance. If she was alone, it would be higher. And if she was a boy instead of a girl, it would be higher. So let's just go ahead and say that insurance would be like $200 a month, right? Hers isn't, but let's say that it would be. So that's 2.04 relative. If we were going off of this 2.67, again, insurance would be $261. Gas was roughly $1.19 a gallon in 2001. Sometimes it would go up a little bit to like $1.49. Sometimes it would drop as low as like 99 cents. But roughly about $1.19 was the typical price of gas. Today, I was over at the gas station earlier, drove by it, didn't stop because I drive an EV. or actually a plug-in hybrid, but I almost never get gas. I've only got gas once in the last 12 months. So gas was $2.59 a gallon. So gas is 2.18x, still under the relative there. Again, food, we talked about it. It's basically double now. Cell phones, look at this. A cell phone, now you can go get a cell phone with unlimited minutes, unlimited data, and unlimited text messaging for $30 a month. I know because that's how much I pay for my daughter's cell phone. $30 a month. So wait a minute. Everything's so much more expensive, I thought. And TV service, listen, I don't know what cable costs because I don't know anybody who has cable. But I know that I have Hulu, Netflix, Disney, and Prime, and it costs me about, I think it's $65 a month for all those. And I get more for those than what I used to get for the basic cable plan back in 2001. So basically cable is about the same price today as it was 20 years ago. So when we do this, if we went down the list and we said, what should these things cost if it kept up with wages, minimum wage here in Missouri? Again, this doesn't go for all parts of the country. I don't live in all parts of the country. I live in Missouri. If we do this, here's the reality that we're facing. Rent should be almost $1,500 for a one-bedroom apartment. A Honda Civic should cost $28,000 for a used Honda Civic. Insurance should cost $261. Gas should be $318. Food should be $13 for a McDonald's value meal. Cell phone should be $533 a month. TV service should be $160 a month. That would be relative. If it kept up with relative to the minimum wage, that's what things would cost. But what we've actually seen is the exact opposite. The cost of living compared to the minimum wage has actually drastically decreased. In other words, if you're a young person watching this, or if you have a young person, maybe you have a teenager who's like saying these things that they see it on social media and they start to believe it and they believe they're a victim, tell them the math doesn't support that viewpoint. Another thing you can talk to them about, or if you're young and watching this, is we keep seeing how bad interest rates are. 7% interest rates. Guys, when I bought my home in 2008, my mortgage rate was 7%. That was not a high rate. It was a low rate. When my parents bought their home, it was in the 80s, in the early 80s, and interest rates peaked at 19% for a mortgage. The only reason people think 7% is high is because they got spoiled on artificially low interest rates of 0%. The Fed rate was 0 and mortgages were going for about 3%. That was the only time in history that mortgages were ever that cheap. 7% is still a pretty good mortgage rate. Since this is a trading channel, we often look at charts. Let's actually look at a chart of mortgage rates. So if we look at it compared to the last couple of years, it looks like they're crazy, crazy high. But if we zoom out, oh my goodness, are they crazy high? Of course not. They're not crazy high at all. Look at this. Back in the 70s, interest rates were higher. All through the 70s, like I said, in the 80s, they peaked at almost 19%. My parents actually bought their house in like 1986. They waited for interest rates to come down, and their interest rate was around 10%. And that was considered good back then. The only reason you feel like this is bad is because you got artificially spoiled through here and all through here, which happened after the great financial crisis of 2008. Mortgage rates are actually still very, very low. So I'm not saying any of this to try to belittle somebody's problems or somebody's hardships, because I do believe that life can be tough. And especially depending on where you live at, life can be tougher for some folks than others. But what I want to stress to people is every single generation has its own unique set of battles they have to fight. For example, my grandparents were actually born, my grandfather was born in 1908 on my dad's side, and my grandmother born in 1918. So they grew up during the Great Depression. I actually don't know much about my mom's family. So like they were growing up during the Great Depression. Again, my parents, my dad was born in the 40s, and when they bought a home, it was in the early 80s or mid 80s, and interest rates were double rates. I mean, that's the challenges that they had to deal with. The baby boomers had their own challenges. People always look at the baby boomers and are like, oh, they had it so easy. No, they absolutely did not. They had their own challenges they had to face. When I was a young child, I remember my dad being a police officer and having to work a second job at a gas station, of all places, just so that he could make ends meet. Every generation has a struggle and every generation has a tough time. The difference is the generation today is being told, especially by social media, that they have it harder than any other generation has ever had it. And it's actually the exact opposite. It's easier today than it's ever been. Now, some people are going to point to housing costs and say, houses cost more than they ever have. So the interest rates are they have more impact. And I will agree that housing is in a really tough spot right now. But again, it's not as bad as people make it sound. The house that I grew up in, when my dad passed away, he left that house to me, my brother, and my sister. And so, of course, we had to decide what to do with it. So in 2006, I was married and I had, my daughter. My brother had a child. My sister had a child. And so there's three of us. And obviously, we couldn't all three live in this house with our families. And so we had to decide, what do we do with this house? And so the decision was made to sell it. We sold that house that I grew up in for $60,000. And that was in 2006. The last time that house sold a couple of years ago, it sold, I believe, for $129,000. It may have sold for less than that if they got a deal, but it was listed at $129,000. So again, if we do the math, $129,000 divided by $60,000, it sold for roughly 2.15x what I sold it for about 20 years ago. But in that same time span here in Missouri, minimum wage is up 2.67. And again, this isn't really a fair number because it's going up to $15 in barely 2 months, not even 2 months. So in 2 months, minimum wage is actually going to be 2.91 relative to what it was just 25 years ago here in Missouri. And again, I understand this is very specific to Missouri. So in different places, the results will be different. But TV services are going to be pretty standard. Cell phones, pretty standard. Food, probably is going to be a little different. Gas, somewhat different, but not all that different. Insurance is a lot of times it's more nationalized because even like when a hurricane hits in Florida, my insurance goes up in Missouri. Cars, again, pretty nationalized, right? Because of national auctions and things like that. Rent is going to drastically vary depending on where you're at because of supply and demand. And minimum wage, of course, it varies where you're at. So my point of this video is not to say that you have no problems. It's not to say that your children have no problems. It's not to say that if you're a young person, you have no problems. It's simply to say that whenever you're looking at your life and you're looking at the challenges, make sure you understand that every generation had challenges, and make sure you understand that you're not actually a victim and that the cards are not stacked against you in a game that you're not able to win. You can absolutely overcome that game. You can overcome the obstacles in your way, and you can do very, very well in your life. And in many cases and in many instances, you're actually better off today than any generation has been in history. All throughout thousands of years of history, you're better off today. This is the best time to be alive ever. So don't take that for granted. But also, don't sit and wait for somebody to come save you. It's up to you. It's not up to the government. It's not up to some family member to leave you an inheritance or to make you rich. It's not up to your boss to give you raises. It's up to you to decide what you're worth. And the easiest way to get wealthy in today's world is by simply living on 80% of the income you make and investing the other 20%. If a person starts investing at 18 years old and they put in just $200 a month and they do that until retirement age, which is currently 67, that is 49 years of investing. At the average return of the market, which is about 10%, that $200 a month will be worth roughly $2.5 million at retirement. And remember, that's at $200 a month. That's not 20% of your income, because that, if it was 20%, you'd only be making $1,000 a month. So realistically, this is going to be several $100s a month, especially when you get into a career someday, or if you have a career, this might be $500 a month or $1,000 a month. And then all of a sudden you're talking about $5-6 million. Maybe you get a better job, you're able to put $1,000 away, which is if you're making $5,000 a month, $1,000 should be going into retirement. Look at that. Now it's over $12 million. And this is starting from zero, guys. You don't need generational wealth handed to you. You can become the person that starts the generational wealth for your bloodline. All that being said, please remember, I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom here in rural Missouri, where cost of living certainly is cheaper than many other areas. Nothing in the video is financial advice, and you should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, Forex, or any other tradable asset. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll get back to charts and my regular trading content next time around. Also, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you're somebody like me that's in your 40s or maybe middle age, is it frustrating to watch people kind of downplay the hardships that we went through? If you're older, is it frustrating watching people downplay the challenges that you had? And if you're young, What do you think? What's your take on this? Is it really tougher today, or did you maybe buy into a myth that you're now realizing was nothing but smoke and mirrors?